welcome to Alive TV. From our newsroom here in Abuja, I'm Khadija Ibrahim. These are the headlines. Cult clashes in Rivers and Lagos. PDP governors pressured to defect. Minister Ali Pate charts new vision for health and prosperity. The news in details. In a compelling new interview, Nigeria's Coordinating Minister of Health, Dr. Ali Pate, has reaffirmed the country's bold commitment to human capital development, stressing that the true wealth of the nation lies not in its oil or minerals, but in its children, youth, and women. Speaking candidly, Dr. Pate outlined a sweeping vision to reform Nigeria's health sector, reinvigorate productivity, and leave no one behind. Pate painted a portrait of a nation full of potential, but one that must act fast. He acknowledged that Nigeria no longer produces much of what it once consumed, and that self-reliance, especially in the health sector, must become a national priority. That's why, he explained, this administration has launched a new health sector blueprint, a comprehensive plan to save lives, produce health, and build resilience, all while ensuring no citizen is left behind. At the heart of the blueprint is a clear first step, reforming governance within the health system. Dr. Pate emphasized the need to defragment the space and acknowledgements that decades of overlapping programs, fragmented responsibilities, and institutional silos have slowed progress. The aim, he says, is not just to treat illness, but to build a stronger, more integrated system that values health as a core part of human capital and economic prosperity.
At the core of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's vision for Nigeria is a country that is prosperous, that is people-oriented, and is peaceful. And at the heart of it is the Nigerian people. And the asset that is Nigerian people is in its women, it's in its children, it's in its youth, and its population. Health is a key component of that agenda, because health is key to accumulation of human capital. And we set out in the complex federal system that Nigeria runs, where its health system had been fragmented for a long time, where it had had many years of underinvestment in many angles and had had drain of human resources away from it, maldistribution, and the fact that it did not produce even much of what it was consuming in drugs and commodities, where disease outbreaks were rampant. This administration set out a blueprint aimed to save lives, reduce physical and financial pain, produce health, and to do so for all Nigerians without leaving anyone behind. That means focusing on equity, on the poorest and most vulnerable. And we set out that in the Health Sector Renewal Investment Initiative, which was unveiled by Mr. President on 12th of December 2023, where the first pillar of this agenda was to do with the governance of the sector. So the federal government works with states and local governments and our development partners, signing a compact that agrees to hold each other accountable based on results, to track that, to orient ourselves towards our citizens' needs, to include civil society, private sector, and to defragment the space. That is the governance part. But that's an underlying part which was successfully done, and we had the joint annual review in 2023-24, and the first state of health report that was ever produced for Nigeria that tracks the performance of each subnational component over time across key indices was identified. Not just individual health, but as a population. Women's health, children's health, reduced child mortality, maternal mortality, did with non-communicable diseases, prevention, treating diseases like cancer, diabetes, hypertension better. So we set out to expand the primary healthcare system, to make it functional at level 2, to improve the level of functionality. So we embarked on increasing the functionality of 8,800 primary healthcare centers, and over time expanding them to 17,000 that are functional, so that Nigerians will have the retail points working between federal government, states, local governments, private sector, development partners to roll that going forward.
A chilling total of 1,686 people were killed in at least 909 cult-related incidents across Rivers and Lagos states. That averages nearly 2 deaths per incident, a figure that climbed sharply in 2021 as economic fallout and political tensions fueled gang mobilization. In 2024 alone, the number of violent clashes reached an all-time high with 273 incidents. Though more fragmented attacks meant fewer deaths per event, a reflection, experts say, of both decentralized violence and greater social media exposure. In Lagos' hot zones such as Mushin and Alagbado, the tension boils beneath the surface. Late-night skirmishes between gangs like Buccaneers and Vikings erupt into volleys of gunfire, forcing residents to scramble for safety and streaming startling videos online. In Rivers, whole villages have been rendered ghost towns with people barricading homes and avoiding roads after dark. Witness accounts and amateur footage on TikTok and X have transformed hidden battlegrounds into harrowing public spectacles. Security analysts say that the spike in incidents isn't just about policing. It speaks to deeper socioeconomic rot. They argue for community-based youth programs, campus-level anti-gang initiatives, and political accountability to cut off funding and patronage networks. Reclaiming neighborhoods from fear, they warn, will require more than just uniforms. It demands tackling the anger and desperation that feed this violence. On the morning of July 1st, Polytechnic Ibadan students flooded the front of the Oyo State Government Secretariat. Placards raised in defiance after Governor Seyi Makinde announced the renaming of their school to Omololu Olunloyo Polytechnic, honoring the late mathematician and former governor. The protest brought traffic on Sango Ele Road to a standstill, as hundreds of students refused to let what they call a hasty decision wipe out over 50 years of institutional heritage. Students, leaders, and alumni quickly mobilized. The Students' Union government wrote to the Oyo State Assembly, imploring them to reject the renaming, warning that stripping the institution of its founding name would erase its identity and legacy. Alumni groups echoed the outcry, lamenting that while honors for the late governor could be appropriate, using the entire school's brand to memorialize him alienates a broader community. The state government, citing Olunloyo's status as the first principal and a distinguished son of Ibadan, insists the name change is a fitting tribute. But students and alumni now stand at curious crossroads. Will authorities engage in dialogue or press ahead with a move many see as erasing collective memory? For now, the gates remain shut, and a once ordinary school day has become a flashpoint in a wider battle over identity, respect, and legacy. Inside the corridors of power in Abuja, whispers of coercion have morphed into open accusations. PDP governors are being harassed and humiliated into joining the ruling APC. Sources within the party paint a picture of sustained pressure, financial audits triggered by the presidency, withheld federal funds, and veiled threats unfolding against state officials. Kola, PDP's national spokesman, pointed to recent defections from Delta and Akwa Ibom, asserting that the pivot to APC was less about ideology and more applied pressure. Rumors suggest that state assemblies allied with the APC are quietly making overtures, hinting at early endorsement for those who toe the party line. Other speculators report that intelligence agencies have begun random investigations in PDP-controlled regions, framing them as anti-corruption but widely interpreted as coercive tools. Ologbondiyan has raised the alarm, warning Nigerians that such tactics risk undermining democratic processes, framing the defections as pre-election engineering. Political analysts note this maneuver isn't new, but the scale marks a shift. With gubernatorial influence tied to parliamentary and presidential sway, the APC seems keen on consolidating power. The PDP is reportedly planning a National Executive Committee meet to strategize a response and possibly flag legal counteractions. The next few weeks could determine if Nigeria's political architecture leans toward authoritarianism or remains resilient against what's being called power politics. On June 30th in Castries, a historic moment unrolled as President Tinubu and St. Lucia's PM Philip J. Pierre officially established full diplomatic ties. Standing before St. Lucian senators and staff, Tinubu invoked a moving statistic from an 1815 census, affirming that many St. Lucians trace their lineage back to Nigeria, fueling what he called a symbolic bridge between continents. He didn't stop at warm words. Tinubu proposed visa waivers for OECS diplomatic passport holders, full scholarships for Caribbean students, and joint commissions for trade, climate resilience, education, and cultural exchange. St. Lucia's PM Pierre responded warmly, referencing shared memories of figures like Sir Danley Alexander, who bridged both nations through judicial leadership. Observers now see this pivot as part of Nigeria's broader Afrocentric foreign policy, wherein connections with the global south are revived on mutual respect, historical solidarity, and pragmatic trade, avoiding traditional donor-recipient dynamics. Cheers echoed from Morocco as Nigeria's Esther Mba and Pamela Bawa secured a podium finish third place at the CAVB Continental Championship, sealing qualification for the 2025 World Championship in Adelaide, scheduled November 14th to 23. After winning 10 sets against Egypt and toppling Kenya, Botswana, and Gambia, their grit paved the way to global recognition. Their coach, Kayode, praised them for resilience beyond their years, noting their tactical adjustment under pressure and travel fatigue. He also emphasized that more backing is needed for beach volleyball to challenge established global powerhouses. Back home, the story transcends sport. This fresh injection into Nigeria's roster of global athletes not only inspires female sports enthusiasts, it highlights the potential of investing in emerging disciplines. The spotlight now swings to support structures, funding, training facilities, and domestic tournaments that can sustain international ambitions. At the close of June, a stifling heat dome settled over Western Europe, pushing Spain and Portugal to furnace-like highs of 115 to 116 degrees Fahrenheit. France, including Paris, woke under 41 degrees Celsius. Red alerts. Nearly 200 schools closed, especially in vulnerable departments, as officials raised alarms over heat stroke and dehydration. Particularly among the elderly and children, the impact stretched from the Mediterranean to the Alps, where glaciers melted at higher than usual elevations, accelerating runoff and reshaping alpine tourism forecasts. Italy paused outdoor work under midday bans, spontaneous wildfires erupted in Greece and France, and swimming pools and cooling shelters became civic lifelines. Even marine heat waves warmed regional seas, raising red flags for fishing industries and coral ecosystems. If these patterns persist, climate scientists warn the record heat of 2025 could eclipse those of 2023 and 2024, reflecting broader warming trends linked to climate change. Authorities across Europe are now bracing for another summer of compounding extremes, water shortages, energy strain, and public health emergencies. On July 1st, as the Constitutional Court suspended PM Paetongtarn Shinawatra following revelations of a private phone call with Cambodia's Hun Sen, leaked in late June. During the call, she referred to Hun Sen as uncle and criticized Thai military leaders, a diplomatic misstep that provoked national uproar and accusations of undermining Thai sovereignty. The court's 7-2 vote enforced her temporary removal, appointing Deputy PM Surya as caretaker. Paetongtarn has 15 days to defend herself before ethics proceedings conclude. Meanwhile, 36 senators filed complaints asserting that her remarks were dishonest and violated the constitution, prompting a separate probe by Thailand's Anti-Corruption Commission, a path that could even force her political disqualification. Politically, the fallout is steep. Paetongtarn's ruling coalition fractured after Boom Jai Thai exited, dropping from a 30.9% approval in March to a mere 9.2% in June. Protests in Bangkok intensified and concerns rose over the return of military influence reminiscent of her father, Thaksin's oustings. Observers warn that Thailand may be heading towards its next constitutional crisis after a decade of political turbulence. Japan completed its hottest June on record, with daily averages teetering around 26 degrees Celsius, an intense late-month spike signaling an early arrival of summer swelter. Climatologists warn this heatwave could foreshadow a truly punishing season ahead, stressing the fragility of power grids, water reserves, and public health infrastructure amid rising temperatures. Unlike Europe, Japan's dome of heat has unfolded with fewer school closures but rising calls to close midday hours in factories and reduce taxi availability. A measure to protect outdoor workers and pregnant women, government advisories now include hydration stations in metro stations and sun exposure warnings pushed via national alert systems. With air conditioning set to spike in use, energy providers face strain. Farmers have also voiced concerns. Layers disrupted by heat stress threaten rice yields, and coastal fish farms face warm water mortality. As the mercury climbs, Japan is bracing for a fragile, energy-hungry, and frail summer, the kind that forces a national reckoning with climate adaptation. That wraps up our news for today. From our newsroom here in Abuja, I'm Khadija Ibrahim.